I, spnanon, your host, am from the western part of North America. My co-host, my main account is a Nord, is from Northern Ireland. And our special guest for today, Arndress, is from Australia. I don't know what part of Australia. Australia is pretty big, but he's from Australia. The sun never sets on the strip poker night at the SPNatI Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 97 of the very same. Again, I am spnanon here with my co-host Nord, and our returning guest, although if you haven't been listening, or if you've only been listening for the last 2-3 years or so, you may not know he's returning, but he's quite the esteemed guest. He's been on twice before, I believe, or at least 2 recording sessions. It is Arndress, a very, very seasoned mod who's been around longer than either of us. Since the days of 2016, I believe he's seen many characters and policy discussions come and go. And he's here to talk about some of his own work, which has had quite the journey itself. But Arndress, why don't you reintroduce yourself? I believe the last time you were on was like the fall of 2021, so probably about 3 years ago now. You were talking about Rogue of all characters.
Yes, I remember it well. I remember I prepared for the wrong characters.
Did you? I don't remember that. I think you pulled it together regardless.
That's because I didn't let on. I had played the other characters, so it was okay.
By the way, are you comfortable sharing what part of Australia you're from?
It's near the coast.
Which one? Everything is near the coast. You can't live in the middle.
It's near the east coast, like 99% of the population.
Is it around Sydney? I've been to Sydney.
I've also been to Sydney. That's as close as I can get.
All right, fair enough. Well, what have you made for this game?
I've made so many things for this game.
Well, I should say, what have you contributed for this game? Because it's not just characters.
I think maybe my most important contribution was I invented the background.surface variable. So in dialogue, you can type ~background.surface and then like it will say like the floor or the road or the sand. Very, very useful. That was all me. You can thank me later. I got SPNatI Edit to put the timestamp in the opponent data so you could tell when the character was last updated. So he actually did that, but I suggested it, which was very important. I suggested the name for the SPNatI community server, and I made the this emoji. You know, like the white this with the black outline? I made that. So as you can say, I've had a pretty illustrious career.
What font is it?
It could be Trebuchet, but I don't know. I think I still have the Photoshop file somewhere.
Now that you're done underselling yourself, what have you actually done for this game?
I've made a few characters. I've made Nagisa. I've made more recently Sanako. In the Masquerade, we did a May rework and we did Panty. Those were collaborative projects. In the Dusty Closets of History, I made May and Diva from Overwatch. Korra. Of course, many of these are collaborations. I picked up Moon and I started writing for Moon. Before I worked on Moon, she had no targeted lines whatsoever. She was famous for having no targeted lines. A few of my projects have been ones where I've picked them up and kind of breathed new life into them where they didn't have much before. And another one was Nuki-chan.
Yeah, you have a rather big picture philosophy compared to a lot of other developers and even moderators, I would say, just in terms of like trying to secure the game's legacy overall, working on like offline characters and making sure they're up to certain standards, or keeping the Newgrounds version up to date and cycled through. Is there anything more you can say about that?
I haven't updated it in about a year, but don't tell anyone. But that's right. I figure there will be a future time where, an unpredictable time where one day development will cease. And you know, whether that is tomorrow or that's 25 years from now, I would like people to be able to play everyone's hard work, and I would like it to be in the best state it can be at that time. I don't anticipate an early death for the game, but the future's unknowable, and so if you enjoy the game today, I would like you to be able to come back to it, you know, in 2034 and still have a lot of fun.
I do have a question for you on that sort of note. Are you in favor of same folder reworks, or are you okay with people doing the like new version and classic version of a character?
I think sometimes there's value to a classic character, but oftentimes there's no value. A recent example is Tifa. There was really no reason to keep the old Tifa because she had very outdated art and almost no lines. So it's not even the quality of the lines aside, the quantity of the lines was extremely small. It was very similar with the Mei rework where there was the old model. Now we built the new Mei on top of the old Mei. So I haven't checked. So it's possible that she still has some of her old basic lines as just filler. But I would be in favor of removing some classic folders. For example, the old Shantae or the old Ryuko. They're not really adding anything to anyone's play experience now. Whereas maybe a more complicated example is the old Hermione, where the art is certainly inferior, but which is the better play experience? One has epilogues, one was written from one writer that was a seasoned writer, and one was written from another writer, so that's a little bit more complicated.
I mean, if you really care that much about older versions of characters, that is why Git history exists.
That's right, and so they are part of the Git history, and so they're still retrievable, but when a character folder is deleted, it will probably never get played again. If you look at the play rates for literally any character that is on SPNatI.net versus the April Fool's Day characters, it's a huge drop. The April Fool's Day characters will get, say, 1 or 2 plays a day because they're almost inaccessible. That's from people who have opted into reporting data, etc., etc. Whereas a character that, say, is an incomplete character from 5 years ago will get way more than that. I can only imagine what a deleted folder character would look like for their playstats. They would basically be lost to time, even if not irretrievable.
Like Nord, I also have a question for you. Newgrounds hasn't been updated in about a year, you said. Are new Maya and Jura on Newgrounds?
I can check. The way I do it is, because there's very limited space on the Newgrounds version, when I put it in, I only put in one person from each franchise. And I rotate them out. So if you were in this time, you're not in next time. So that's particularly applicable to, say, the My Little Pony girls, because, you know, if Twilight Sparkle is the character for this time, it won't be next time.
Well, you know what? Since you don't have a concrete answer, I'll just assume that they are, and that way we can avoid another tense standoff. Like
we've got all the Ventrake girls there. We've got Maya, we've got Jura, we've got Parfait. Like they're all there.
Okay, yeah, sure. I mean, the big question would be Barnett, because they did go a while on testing.
I'm pretty sure it was last updated before Barnett. But I just checked 417 days. It's on my to-do list, but
I don't like the sound of that at all.
It takes me about 3 hours
to
do
it. You could have just not said anything.
I just realized this is a bit funny because, like, it still has the widget to enable offline characters. It just does nothing. And it has I love the testing roster button just, like, missing the text entirely, but still being clickable.
Just, like, manually deleted that out, yeah.
It's fantastic.
Well, anyway, I think it's time to move on, but while we're talking about our work, and Arndress, you will get a chance to talk about your work in more detail, but would any of you like to shill anything now that we've arrived at the host shilling corner? Nord, what have you been working on that we won't be talking about today?
That we won't be talking about today? Interesting question. Well,
You're always dipping your hands in something.
I've gotten Rose ready for mod QA, which of course means it's the perfect time to think about adding an epilogue to her, like I did with Mia from Golden Sun. Haven't had the motivation to, like, get up all the assets yet for it, but I've started making character models. It's just making backgrounds and all of that. I've got the script written for it, so hopefully that'll come out in a month or two, maybe. Who knows? I've been enjoying the surge of interactions seen with the new characters from the Masquerade. We'll be talking about them a bit more next episode, some of them. In general, I've been trying to help support newcomers because we've had a lot of newer people come to the community lately. I've been meaning to ask them where everyone's coming from, because it would be interesting to know if people are seeing it on Reddit or Twitter or something.
That's always fascinated me. I'd love to know where people came from.
Arndress, is there anything you'd like to throw your weight behind?
I wanted to use the opportunity to say I'm working on Nagisa again after taking about a year off from major development, and I would love to add more poses to her. When I was doing lines for Sanako, I had such a long list of poses to do, and that's because I did most of that posing myself. But for Nagisa, my posing desire has been drained. If someone would like to pose Nagisa to add, not replace, poses, please reach out to me, because I would love to work together with you, with Horse Killer's model, to add more diversity to the Nagisa's posing, if that's something you're also interested in.
I made more poses for Maya and Jura, mostly butts. There's not a whole lot to talk about there. I am working in an image editing software trying to crystallize the different animatable parts of their bodies at different angles for better use as assets in epilogues. I want to get started on that in earnest at the nearest opportunity. And I felt and I just made these for the fun of it in the meantime. You can take a look at a few of those. They're pretty rare at the moment, but they will get some use in future, somewhat extensive, very interesting, and very sexy interactions. This time with non-franchise mates. I talked about their new dual forfeit last time, but this time they're branching out. They're interacting with others, so look forward to that.
Nice work.
Thank you. So there you go. You can stare at those for a while.
But they're so censored on YouTube. I can't see the important parts.
I mean, he only has to kind of censor bare butts and stuff, but
the thumbnail got stricken last time, I think.
I think the thumbnail for the beach episode thumbnail was a bit it was going over the line. But you can see 2 pixels of crack now. Better nuke the video.
I mean, it's all bots. Who knows what sets them off? Next episode, we will be talking about some of the Masquerade characters for the first time that we've alluded to in the previous episode. As for the Masquerade as a whole, I don't think there's been too much movement since last recording session. There's a lot of projects kind of floating near the top, but not quite breaking the surface and getting to the testing. They all seem to have their different hang-ups preventing them from reaching that, but they're close.
Some of them, like Zagreus and Constans, are they're getting towards the final push, I would say. Getting the art done is difficult, particularly for team development hell, who, as we said before, live up to their name and were plagued with technical issues. That's what we get for tempting fate. Some of the teams have sort of pulled out or stagnated for now. I think something to take away from it is that even if your character didn't get into testing right away, you can always work on it just at your own pace and get them there later. And even if the character doesn't work out in the end, you still have experience now for knowing yourself better and how you'd work in a team or what you'd be looking for in someone to collaborate with.
I think it's true that a person's second effort in development is always better than their first effort, to the point where they want to go back and revise. So certainly the learning experience can be helpful, whether it reaches testing or not.
I just hope a lot of the newcomers stick around. Seems like some of them are at least quite active and eager.
I was able to read the application forms when we were working out the teams within Sijuani. That was really the part that I was involved in the most. And I really appreciated the enthusiasm and the research and the depth of knowledge that a lot of newcomers had that expressed in their applications. And I'm excited to see what that turns into.
It is nice to see someone with knowledge that's not just a Discord ghost.
Anytime someone pops up with this fully formed, perfect character that they just got from reading our terrible documentation in all kinds of places, I'm amazed and impressed. Locket, for example, was one who just came out of nowhere with something amazing.
Yeah, please don't call them a sock puppet right off the bat. That's not encouraging of a first impression. But also, briefly, I want to plug the ongoing anonymous character feedback poll, the annual SPNatI character feedback poll that is going on right now. Link in the description and in the game as well. You can leave anonymous feedback, positive or negative, as long as you'd like, for any and every of the characters currently online. That's both main roster and testing. Go do that. It's slowed down a little bit, or at least there's been quite a stretch of people only responding to like 1 or 2 characters at a time. So please, if you have detailed thoughts, get them out there. It's always good when you get something that's like really positive or really actionable. So, devs appreciate that. At the moment, there is also the livecast AMA form, short for Ask Me Anything, where I, Nord, and the usual editor, Mr. Solitaire, will be holding our annual livecast AMA in the SPNatI Discord voice chat, where we will be answering your many spicy, possibly game-related, but not all, questions and interacting with the chat as well. So you can go take a look at those in the episode list as well. They tend to go for quite a bit longer. They're not as edited, but we give our takes on everything you can think of in this life, and come away with a much stronger understanding of how to live your own. We are nothing if not the modern sages. Anything you'd like to say about either poll, Nord or Arndress, the feedback poll and the livecast AMA?
With the feedback poll, I really appreciate the feedback that I get from my characters. I try to, in a reply to one of the posts, quote it all and break down different responses, and I have used that to address different things with my characters before, especially when one point of feedback comes through a lot, like a request, that when it's not an epilogue request, that's something that I will pay attention to. But just any kind of feedback or acknowledgement of my work is very much appreciated, and I'm sure most devs feel the same.
I've appreciated all the feedback. I've had fun with some of the ones that are clearly just copied and pasted, but I've really taken to heart the ones that give genuine praise. I'd be fine getting critique as well, as long as the critique isn't just, I don't play with men, delete him, that sort of thing. Or one that's like another complaint about the Aqua and Aqua epilogue, where it's like, it's literally like, I don't like it, please remove it. It's like you're the one in control of your mouse and keyboard. You don't have to click onto it. But overall, it's been really good to give and receive praise, and I'm looking forward to the AMA. Remember, no question is too personal. That doesn't mean we have to answer truthfully.
That's true. You can ask anything. That doesn't mean we're going to answer the way you might want to. But, we try to engage in good faith as long as the respondents do. So, we've been talking a lot about the Masquerade over this episode and the last few. But life does exist outside of it. And today, on this episode, 97, we will be covering 3 topics, 2 on main roster and 1 on test roster, that have nothing to do with the Masquerade. Next time, we'll be in Masquerade City. So just enjoy the drive in the meantime. For starting off on the main roster, we have an art update for one of the longest tenured original characters on the main roster, Aella, no last name given. An adventurous knight, berserker type, from sort of like a medieval fantasy setting. But she is an original character by Bluecoin. And she is fucking big. Anyway, she's had many reworks and updates over the years. I'd say she's probably the most developed and most updated original character out of any of them. I think I've said before, Bluecoin is like the only original character creator that's really stuck with it and made a bunch of them and kept updating them. Most of them kind of bounce. after adding their original character. But Bluecoin is different, and Aella has had many updates in the past, adding armor, adding various different modes and styles to her, and various dialogue and mechanics. This may be the most visual. It is pretty much a complete overhaul of her art. I mean, not in every sense. She is kind of broadly posed the same, but her hair is different. I believe at least elements of her face are different. The outfit, I believe, is mostly the same, but her body has also received a lot of detailing. It is very unlike what she had before in terms of the level of detail and polish. So I think we're going to mostly focus on art here. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about dialogue. For example, for me, it was kind of revisiting her. But Arndress, what did you think of Aella's art update that she got?
I thought it was amazing. It's really the conjunction of two different topics that have been much discussed. One is with star power, how a popular character comes with a fan base already ready to love the character. And also that art is just so important, that a well-written character with bad art is not going to be as popular as a poorly written character with great art. And so it really, with the original character starting from square zero, of course, with as far as a fan base goes, good art is so important. And as the standards of the game have risen, to win those fans and to stand out this is really something that Aella needed to get her seen by people. And just as we would choose someone from the roster that might be a franchise we've never heard of or never played before, I hope people will see Aella's cute new look and choose her and play with her. The biggest difference is the hair, of course, because that's what's on the selection screen. And her new side-swept hair is really cute. It's got the bad highlights. It's way more distinctive. It looks less like a Kiske default. But of course, further down, the new breasts are very attractive. So I think that goes a long way to modernize her.
I've got a little bit to say about this. It's a great change. It makes her look a lot cuter, but it doesn't make her look... Well, it makes her look cute, but it doesn't make her look overly like a moe blob, like someone like Sanako might be, for example. It's good detail. The only thing I think is lacking from giving a character custom breasts, and I was guilty of this when I started adding them to my characters, is there are no poses that have boob squish. And I feel like it's sort of an important thing for really getting the point across of the appeal of breasts is the way that you can move them about and squish them together. And she has a couple of poses where you would expect that to be the case. And there's always you kind of have to make a second set of custom breasts to pull it off, and you have to figure out how to do it with poses, but I think it's well worth the effort to do so. The second thing I want to mention is that Bluecoin actually recently added in a character setting after we've finally lowered the requirements for those. Although I'm pretty sure, she's allowed 5 settings anyway, so she could have had this before. But Bluecoin's added in a toggle where you can essentially decide if she's covers herself up more or less. It says ENF.
I tried that option.
Yeah, I tried it, and the way he's set it up, I think it's still random, and she still covers herself up in most of her poses. But it's nice that I did see more instances where she wasn't covering the goods as much, and I think that was a nice feature to have, just because you've made this good model. Oh, she's covering herself up for most of the game, so you don't get to see the detail you added.
Yeah, I appreciated it. I mean, that's just what I personally like. What I also personally like is something I didn't see, which is this massive ass of hers. I don't know why you would ever make that random. That should be something that should be guaranteed. Come on. I will add custom boob squish eventually. I'm sorry. I know this is a veiled attack on me and my estate. I'll get to it. Okay. But you can also adjust and squeeze the ass. Okay, that's what I spent all my time on. All right, back off.
Well, as one of our community members put it, a custom butt is just custom breasts, slightly altered. So you need to do it in reverse.
Well, I mean, they actually do have like squished versions. I just haven't really implemented them to that extent. But while we're on the subject of the less ENF mode, do you have anything else to say about that?
It didn't really change her dialogue that much. It was mainly a pose thing. I don't want to get too critical of like Bluecoin's development style here, but I will say that like I think he sort of brute forced it a bit of like duplicating all the dialogue and just set like having one be slightly higher priority if you've changed her setting. There are smarter ways to do it now that we have both the pose maker and pose sets. Like pose sets are practically designed for a feature like this. But I do appreciate that it's like difficult to go back and revise hundreds of lines of dialogue to, use a pose set for these specific stages sort of thing. So it's something to keep in mind if you're like developing a newer character or one with a lower line count, is that the sooner you invest in like doing that, the easier it is going forward. Like with Zeke and Pandy, me switching to using pose sets was a great thing, because it means I only have to make 4 custom poses per pose instead of 9. But yeah, that's just a very technical thing. The end result is the same for the most part.
I'm glad I was able to see more of her body with this setting. I wasn't really consciously thinking about it while playing, but I guess if she was started covering up, which I didn't really see, I probably would have started thinking about it because it would have annoyed me. So we got that going for it at least. Yeah, I agree. Like the dialogue didn't really seem too changed. She did seem kind of like asexual, or at least like confused with how to engage with the sexuality, but that's kind of always been her character. I'm not going to start criticizing that. The body itself, I agree, much more detailed, much sexier, much better overall. I agree, like the hair. The hair overall is better. It's more distinct. What she had before felt kind of like ragged in a way. It was just like a Keisuke default. And this, it's still like it looks windswept. It doesn't look like, she's all done up for someone who should be an adventurer, but it is more appealing overall. Just has like, simpler, more appealing shapes, sort of a bigger clumps and strands that read better.
I love the way it drapes over her shoulder guards as well on one side.
Mm-hmm.
Like how it's being split in half by it.
Yeah, you could if it was longer, you could do some Godiva hair covering her breasts. But anyway, I don't think it's perfect. It does seem, for custom hair, it does seem a little under detailed. Again, that's probably just because, it's an original character. You didn't have any kind of reference to work from. I think it could be like more voluminous. It does seem like it doesn't extend very far off of her head. It seems like she doesn't have that much hair, which is something you generally want to get across when it's kind of long like this and fluffy and windswept. Is try to, if he feels like going back to it, try to add a little bit more volume to it overall. But overall, I quite liked this. I'd say it's a definite improvement. The only other thing I want to nitpick, if I can find it real quick, there was one pose that she used a lot, probably because he had fewer back in the day. It was this one, interested. And I did not vibe with it at all. She used it all the time, and it's like, now that I know it's called interested, it kind of makes sense. It looks like it's a very positive interest. She looks engaged, but she was often using it for like poses where she seemed kind of confused or skeptical, and it really doesn't get that across at all. So you might want to reconsider the body language on that if you want to add like a more negative version of this pose. One where like the irises are shrunk down or something. She looks kind of. I think you could get some variety on this, since we're looking at the art. Anything else to say about Aella's art update? Nord, Arndress?
No, that was it from me.
I appreciate, as the person who makes the trading card not at the inventory cards, to have a whole new set of nude poses to choose from when making the cards, because sometimes there's not much variety there. So all those new poses that start with the letter Z, thank you.
Now that we've got the preamble out of the way, it's time for you two to start chilling yourselves. We have one character by Arndress and another by Nord. We'll start off with the one by Arndress, which, oh boy, we kind of discussed when she first returned to testing. Not came on testing, but returned because her development originally started in 2018. Sanako Isogai from Clannad, also known as Sane Furukawa, from also from Clannad. Duh. It's a Nagisa's mother in disguise. We went through the whole song and dance and the brief overview of her development story. But now that we have Arndress on here proper, he can explain his own perspective and exactly how she finally made it to the main roster. And boy, was it a long time coming. Perhaps the longest of any character who technically made it to testing and then main at some point. Please explain exactly what the process was here.
I haven't checked the facts, but it could be. Maybe someone in the comments will work that out for us.
I mean, it wasn't the longest unbroken stay in testing, but I think it might be the longest gap.
Yeah, it might be the longest off testing and then actually making to main, but I couldn't be sure. Last year, I was thinking about what unfinished business do I have? I got the Nagisa rework back up and done, and I was just doing like daily polish. I thought, there's characters that I feel like deserve better. Diva deserves better. Mei deserves better. Mei from Overwatch Mei. But Sanako was the kind of character that I would want to adopt, because she was put on testing and fell off and just is languishing and not really doing much for the game. And who could do that except me? Well, lots of people could do it, but who would do it? And only I would do it, I guess. This was not long before...
To clarify, you're the one who put her there in the first place.
I am. It was not long before Horsekiller left us. Horsekiller and I approached Horsekiller and I said, would you be willing to make this model? And he said yes, but I'm not going to pose it. So he and I worked together. He made an amazing model, as you can see. And he and I worked together where I adapted all of her existing poses into new ones, and he would like give me critique, like, this looks off balance, or the finger should be this way, or the expression doesn't match the name of the pose, etc., etc. And we went through a lot of iterations like that. And so I ended up doing all of her posing. But of course, the bigger task for me was the writing. So for more than a year, I wrote 5 lines every day, and that's about my creative limit. I can spend way too long on a single line, but just going at it slowly, I gave her the polish that I wish all of my characters had. The biggest change since the last episode of the podcast was, of course, everything to do with her stripping. Her stripping lines were mostly her legacy lines, and also her stripping poses were non-existent. That's really the one big miss that I had for her return to testing. By this point, Horsekiller was long gone, but Purple Kurai stepped in and was able to do some amazing forfeit poses and stripping poses, which are all very nice. To go with those, and as part of one of my sponsorship conditions, I rewrote all of her stripping lines. So I looked through her stripping cases, saved a few lines into a notepad, literally deleted everything else, and just rewrote every single thing. Because I feel like a character's strip sequence is the main part of their character. It's the part that, well, first of all, it's the part that a player will see every single game. They might not see a hand line, but they will see the stripping lines. And it's really your best opportunity to characterize them.
Oh, they could just win every hand.
Well, they could just win every hand, but if they do, then that's a whole different problem, isn't it? Then you're going to be really stretching those okay hand lines from stage 0. So I rewrote all of her stripping lines, and I picked different themes, and I wrote like a three line theme on each thing. And I also did some bonus themes too, so there's some extra stuff to discover. And then I also wrote full interactions with Nagisa, which I cannot believe. I had not done that previously, but I'd used my normal position detection system, so she has a complete set of lines for both left, right, and A, B, and BA sequence for placing them on the table.
Is there anything else you'd like to point out about the project that you think may go over people's heads even after they play her? They have something that might not get appreciated about the process, because like even this testing stay after her return, it wasn't the shortest thing in the world. I think she came on like the early part of this year, and like she's been getting development, of course, but I mean, what did you do throughout that whole time? Mostly, what did you focus on?
Mostly, it was just that 5 lines a day. I think the best way to improve a character is playtesting. So just literally playtest your own character again and again and again and again. And if you see a line that you hate, then delete it and just write a new line over the top of it. And if you see a line where you go, that's okay, but I really don't want to see it more than once per game, or I really don't want to see it every game, just like pad out that case more and more and more. And so by doing that, you can really hit those spots that will get seen every single game. So whereas like a male chest reveal probably won't happen that much. It will happen every game likely, but not, 50 times in one game. That kind of polish is something I did a lot. But I had to do it knowing that she will never be like a superstar, that her source is getting a little bit older now, even though it's been like a top 10 anime for a long time. Its height is gone, and
I feel you on that one.
She's not going to be the darling of thing. And even if for people who have C-Claned, they might not even know who it is at first glance because she's in disguise. That's its own writing challenge. But I would really...
Why did you choose to make her disguised form and the limitations that would pose? Is it just so she could coexist with Nagisa?
Pretty much. I was thinking I would really like to work on another character. This is in 2018. Who will I like and who's a good character? And it wasn't because she was Nagisa's mother, but I thought, I just really like this character, but it just can't work with Nagisa being there. Who would be okay with that? But this is from her time in this costume. In the anime, Nagisa actually does know that this is her mother because she's in on the secret from the start. But her other parent, her father, is in disguise in that same season, and she has no idea who it is when she's looking at him. So please, 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 no one ever add Akio Furukawa. I beg of you. But MC God. Akio, not a good April Fool's Day project. I will not appreciate it. But there was that premise there of her not recognizing her own family member in a very obvious costume. And of course, the other characters not recognizing her in the anime was too good an opportunity to pass up. Of course, it does have its challenges. In the feedback poll, there was someone who left feedback very similar to the feedback that was mentioned in the previous time she was on the podcast, which is it makes it difficult to target her and to really interact with her because her whole identity is a mystery. So she can't really delve into that too much. And so a lot of her characterization has to be her slipping up and her accidentally saying things that might sound a little bit old-fashioned or sound what like an older person would have, or maybe have like the values and morals of an older person. Not terribly old, but just, a generation older than a high schooler. But that can be its own enjoyment in reading it, but it can be quite tricky to write because someone who won't really tell you what they are, there is that danger of them not getting any characterization, really.
It's definitely a challenge that, we get a lot of requests for characters who, like the Forgers from Spy X Family, where, yeah, they're hot and they would be fun to see, but it would be impossible to target them because they would lie about literally everything about themselves. I think you struck a good balance with Sanako, and she feels... Sorry, can I go on my segment now, because I've got quite a bit to say?
Please.
I really like what you did with her. She has... It's almost an entirely different experience when pairing her with Nagisa. Obviously, they target each other fully, but there is still room for Sanako to have her own reactions to the rest of the game rather than like you could have gone way over the top in minutes. So like Sanako is literally just like saying, "Nagisa, don't look away from that. It's improper for high schoolers like us." She is so cute. The art's really good. The posing's really good. On the topic of like boob squish that I mentioned, she doesn't really cover herself up much. So I appreciated seeing this pose in game, the Y cleavage one, where like it's still her doing that deliberately. Much appreciated. She does sort of lean into the like the vibes of like, you know, is secretly a MILF when she's played alone, and I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's come out more in targets, I feel.
Yeah. I've enjoyed targeting her a fair bit, although it does take like your left and right targeting scheme. I've talked about it before. I won't yell at you too much for it here, but it does take like 1.5 times the effort to target her, because you have to adjust based on like who's on the left. But overall, it does give richness to the interactions you do see, and it does indirectly address the problem some people bring up now and again, which is that like it can be hard to tell who's talking to who at first glance. I like her so much. You did a great job with her.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It's one of those. I remember she was one of those characters where I think there was sort of a collective energy of thinking that you were sort of joking when you said, "Yeah, I'll bring back Sanako," and then you just did it. And everyone's like, "Whoa!" So you did a good job there, like keeping her, like not letting her be just forgotten about.
My thoughts on Sanako have not largely changed since she first returned to testing earlier this year, but I was quite positive on her from the start, so don't take that as a bad thing. I think, you know, she was quite well realized when she returned, and now you've just kind of been adding content. She didn't like feel qualitatively different in that regard. I remember I played her when she first returned with Nagisa to see how they interacted, and I praised her especially for how well she walked that tightrope and made everything feel very safe and comfortable and not weird. And of course Nagisa's side as well. This time I played without her, and I agree. Like her interactions definitely brought out the milfy side of her a little bit more. Still within reason, still mostly keeping up the facade in a way that was still appealing. I felt like she did feel a little more active, and like there was more to say about herself. Maybe that's because she did have some very specific targets. I tested the targets that we had been working out, so I very much enjoyed developing interactions with Maya and Jura, with Nagisa and Sanako. And, you know, I'm not the biggest fan of your whole left to right thing that you have going on, but I try to, you know, if a developer believes in something, I try to engage with it as best as I can in good faith, and give it a try. And it has been very interesting, even if it's not my personal cup of tea. You know, it's unique, and it's an avenue to more content, different content. So I appreciated that, and I played her with Jura. So Jura was on the left and Sanako was on the right, because that side is complete right now. And I can tell you, it was all working. You don't have to check that.
I'll still check it anyway, just to be extra thorough. But May is first, I believe.
The funny thing is, like, because I'm so used to checking which character is targeting the target, and, you know, reading in that direction, it actually kind of messed me up reading the sequence from left to right, because that's not what I'm used to.
Did you play them in the game just the two of them, or did you have other people too?
It was a full table.
Yeah.
So something I almost forgot about is I love that you added the like caution sign. I forgot about that because I hadn't played them together in a while. Where you just outright give like a content warning if someone starts a game with both of Sanako and Nagisa, just saying, you know, it's her mother, she doesn't recognize her.
Oh, that's funny. If anything, there'd be a content warning, like warning, there is no incest that's going to happen if you're into that.
I mean, I feel like that's really important to flag the incest angle, both for this character and a character we'll talk about next episode. But I would like people to make an informed decision. Yes, it is Nagisa's mother, but deliberately Nagisa does not and will not ever recognize her, and so it's really only a one-way recognition. So if you're okay with that, then that's okay. But also, it's not incestuous in that they're not interested in each other. Neither of them looks at the other and thinks, I like what I see, but rather it is modest in that way.
It's like kissing her brother in Back to the Future, you know? You can just smell it. Something's off.
Yeah. Well, she wants to. In Back to the Future, she really wants that kiss, but when she gets it, not so much of a fan.
It's kind of funny, you know, Jolene and Jotaro, they do a similar thing in reverse where the child recognizes the parent and not the other way around, because Jotaro is from a time before he had Jolene. But yeah, has there been an example of a project or like a character that's like very predicated on some other character from their source not being made ever, and then it ended up happening? Like, speaking of her husband.
Wait, there was like Blake and her mother from Ruby.
Yeah, but that didn't really pan out. Like,
It was a bit dicey.
Or they were like made by the same person, I think.
Yeah.
The point I'm trying to make is like you write a character and then you really, really hope, based on the premise that you've written them under, that some other character never gets made, and then if they do, it's like, fuck. Did that ever happen?
Okay, yeah. It is. I want to
like
say
someone making a solo Barnett, for example, like that just fucks me over.
Or Amy Rose really doesn't want Sonic to join because it's very confusing.
Yeah. I wish Sonic was here, and Sonic's right the fuck there.
Wibbly's had to deal with that, with all the lines referencing darkness and how she's not there.
Yeah.
Yeah. The entire Konosuba cast is now like, just on this little tangent. The entire Konosuba cast is now there. So now, Wibbly,
like Cosmo doesn't. He's really old. He's not updated.
Wibbly and My Mans are having to update like most of the Konosuba cast themselves. Not even factoring in that Wiz is coming into the game. So you're gonna have like 6 characters in a table of 4 maximum. So you have to plan all the contingencies.
Yeah. Oh boy.
But it's sort of a nightmare scenario for me that, you know, the monkey's paw curls and your cursed wish is granted, that like, someone is interested in developing another Xenoblade character. Oh, who is it? Fiora, Dunban's little sister. Oh no.
Thank God I haven't had to deal with that in any capacity.
That's okay, because she's in disguise.
Oh God.
The last thing I want to say about Sanako is something that I think I said the last time as well, which is, the vocalizations that she has, where she doesn't really say much else when she's masturbating. Yeah, that is kind of underwhelming. You'd want her to kind of like slip a little bit and maybe get a little extra milfy. I'm not sure exactly why you did that, but it felt more egregious, or because or more offensive because I wasn't playing with Nagisa. You know, if Nagisa was there, it's like, yeah, maybe you don't want her to engage with the kind of things she might be saying otherwise, but without her there, yeah, it just kind of felt like a big nothing.
I can address that. And in fact, one of my sponsorship conditions was to add more non-sound lines, which I did via the magic of thought lines, which I think adds something. But usually,
she's very good though, and I'll let you give your closing comments now.
I don't really like to have characters just chit-chat during their forfeit. Some will. I think May from Pokemon will. But normally, I just think they would not be thinking about that kind of stuff. There's definitely nothing unique about Sanako that means that she should make noises during her forfeit. But I do think it is something that it would make sense for more characters to do. And at that time, no one was doing it. Whether I revisit that decision in the future, I don't know. But maybe if it becomes too cliche. Before we move on to the next topic, I just wanted to point out some other things about Sanako that you can enjoy during your next playthrough for the listeners. One is that her posing, her hair either goes in front or behind, whether the stage has a breast focus or a crotch focus. So if she's just shown her bra or her panties, that's what will be in focus. But when it shifts from chest focus to crotch focus, the hair will go in front, whether that's the bra reveal or the breast reveal. So she doesn't show as much as she could, even though she's letting all that there. The other thing is she has quite a few alternative lines for an all-male table for her whole strip sequence. And also, if you call yourself master, she does more role play, because I tried to lean into that kind of thing that people opt into, and rather than shame them for it. She also, as a sponsorship condition, has lines for if you show that you're wearing either her panties collectible or Nagisa's, or even both. So depending on her state of undress, she has a whole ton of lines for that. It's very brief for each one, but that's just something extra and fun. If you would play her, I would really enjoy that. And if you would watch Clannad, that would be even better. That would be my ultimate goal. So go watch Clannad.
I think I'd like to watch it at some point. Nord, any closing comments on Sanako?
Clannad is one of those things where it's just sort of always been there. Even before you even recognize it as a show to be watched, if you get me. It's like how the internet has always had certain TV shows or anime, it's just one of those shows where you always used to see screenshots from it, and you see the characters and you see oh, cute anime girl reacting gif here, it's Nagisa sort of thing. So I think it's one of those classics that just sort of is everywhere in internet pop culture, even if you don't recognize it. It's maybe slowly fading out of relevancy over time, but I think Sanako here is a good representation of it's a good representation of what I imagine Clannad is like. I don't know if that point makes any sense whatsoever.
I have a final comment on Sanako to make, which is that I think her aho gay. All three of them should swap side to side with her head.
Never.
Why? That's correct.
I don't want to make people think she's a cartoon character. That's a very cartoon character thing to do.
I mean, Goku does it.
Goku's a cartoon character.
Maya does it. Whatever. So, speaking of anime hair sticking up, Nord made Yusei Fudo from Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. That's my introduction to him.
Yes, I certainly did. His hair can't mirror because it is symmetrical.
It's always mirroring. Every second post is mirrored.
Yusei is also known as Nord's sixth final character or so. It's really just when the mood strikes him now. Trust
me, guys, for real this time.
I think is what you can get away with. Okay, so I'm not the biggest Yu-Gi-Oh guy. If only Rinka Best Girl, also known as Joe, was still here hosting the podcast, it would be 4 hours long. It'd be like the Sonic episode, except he's talking about Yu-Gi-Oh with you. If you're unfamiliar, this is the card games on motorcycles guy. He plays card games on motorcycles. Which came out around 2008, which I guess is why Yu-Gi-Oh! The Abridged series was making fun of it at the time.
Yeah, back then it was the biggest thing, and then it had the crossover movie, which was abridged, actually. It was pretty funny. It's where a lot of the memes come from. But there's a lot going on in the series, to the point where I would argue card games on motorcycles is only the tip of the iceberg for how crazy it gets.
That's generally been my impression of Yu-Gi-Oh! But please, you can introduce him better than I can, Nord. Explain what exactly happened here.
Okay, so Yusei, never really thought I'd make him, but I'm sort of at the level of skill where I can make him and make him look good. Writing-wise, he's a bit of a challenge. I'll explain why in a bit. But basically, as a character, he's the protagonist of his series. He only loses one duel in the entire series, and it's in a flashback. to when his friend beat him, took his rare card, took his motorcycle, and left the slums they grew up in to make it big in the Neo Domino City, which is a sort of like 20 minutes into the future setting. The card games on motorcycles is basically because of the weird and wonderful physics of the Yu-Gi-Oh universe. Dueling literally creates energy from another takes energy from another dimension, and so they've got infinite clean energy as long as people continue playing card games on motorcycles, and like the energy fuels the motorcycles themselves. Adding on to that, after Yusei escapes the slums on his new motorcycle and fights his friend, he gets marked with a symbol on his right arm, not the one seen in game here, which means he is one of the chosen ones of the Crimson Dragon, an ancient Aztec god that defended the Earth from outer space godlike beings which came to be known as the Earthbound Immortals, which are imprisoned in the Nazca lines. And now he's gets set on a quest with his friends to essentially stop the Dark Signers, because he's one of the Signers, and of course that means there's Dark Signers who want to revive the Earthbound Immortals and destroy the world. And this is a children's card game anime. Remember, all of their conflicts are resolved through Yu-Gi-Oh duels on motorcycles about 20% of the time. As a character,
now that you've read the Yu-Gi-Oh wiki article, like what exactly did you want to get across with him in SPNatI? You know, why'd you pick him, and what do you want to do with him?
He's sort of, every character of mine is a new sort of challenge. With him, it's sort of a like second take on Yuno, because Yuno was like entirely like he started out just as a meme. He was from a meme, and I was like, okay, can I play the shonen card game protagonist like straight? But
that's exactly what one of my notes is on him, is that he sounds like Yuno.
But with Uno, it's just leaning into the silliness of, okay, they play Uno, that's the card game. With Yusei here, it is like it is completely straight. It's like, yeah, he'll acknowledge that to other people it sounds stupid, but from his perspective, it's like completely normal, because it's literally just part of his daily life. He's a challenge for me to write because I've never written a character this like serious and stoic before. Like, even someone like Dunban is a lot more witty rather than, you know, straight-faced, making serious remarks. I do try to, like, have him be a little bit playful, but I'm still trying to keep him mainly focused on being the straight man to everyone else, despite being, you know, a card game protagonist. He's one of the more badass Yu-Gi-Oh protagonists just by himself as well. Like, the mark on his face, for example, is a prison chip, because he went to prison for escaping the slums and breaking curfew. Because dystopian class problems are a part of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds.
Yeah, not all their conflicts are resolved with the children's card games. I know he throws hands at some point.
Yeah, like, literally a moment so good, 4Kids didn't censor it. Or, like, they didn't cut out the scene, they just had, like, flashes to try and censor the punches, but they left it in. In terms of direction, I'm rewatching Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's subbed, because I've gone over all the material of him from the dubbed version, but the dubbed version only dubbed like 2 out of 3 series. So there's a fair bit of context change because, you know, 4Kids toned down some of the adult themes. Like, in prison, one of Yusei's cellmates gets, you know, has a pocket knife planted on him, and then he gets beaten up for it. Whereas in the subbed version, it's just you don't see that, and you just hear the prison warden saying, we're putting you in solitary for contraband magazines. Like, silly censorship moments like that. And so it's fascinating watching it subbed, and I'm planning to finish the whole series before I'm done writing Yusei here to make sure I can fix anything that's maybe a bit wrong. But The last thing I'll say on that note is that I'm trying to make him like a fusion of his dubbed and subbed versions. Sort of like he has the voice he would have had in the dub, but everything that happened in the subbed version is canon instead. I don't know how much anyone else will really pay attention to that, though. Anyway, that's my entire explanation for why I've made him. Please, tell me your thoughts.
Someone will really appreciate that. Even if that someone is you, isn't that still worth it?
Yeah.
Arndress, what did you think of Yusei?
I really like it when a story that might be for a simpler audience, like someone creative takes a hold of it and goes in a crazy direction and uses that opportunity to make whatever they want. And that's what happened, it sounds like, with Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, and that's what's happened with Yusei is good too. His art is outstanding. I mean, I had to start with the extended hand pose is iconic in itself. The way you make art both for male and female characters, Norn, it looks effortless, like you did it without any trouble at all, and yet I know you must have slaved away to perfect this. But yeah, the result is, having not exhaustively looked at every pose, it looks flawless. Even just like the shape of his nipples on his chest looks really cool, and of course the hair. I like his shiny pants too. They look awesome. Regarding his dialogue, I really liked his tone. I thought his characterization came out well through his tone. Maybe similar to but I guess you chose a similar character deliberately, and I can see you've got lines to and placeholder dialogue with ready to set up more interactions. In fact, I think that's the character he targets most at the moment. I could be wrong. So if they are on the same table at the same time, it's not like it's just going to be a coincidence. So I think that's okay. I think some of his stripping lines, they felt, even though the tone was good, the content made me think any character could have said this, that kind of trap. And I'm just looking at one right now that says, right, socks are coming off next, no surprises there, right? And then followed by, I feel so much better. And that works for the character, but I didn't learn anything, and there's a really difficult balance to strike, and many people go the other way too far, where you don't want to say, name drop someone unnecessarily, or, every single line is just dripping with too many references, but I felt like that was his time to shine, and some, but not all of those lines were something that is something that I think that you'll get to over time. But certainly, any actual targeted dialogue exchanges, those would be completely superseded. But that's something I would hope to see in the future. But all of his other dialogue that I saw, I felt fit him well, and he had a really good attitude that I thought fit his visual style so well.
Writing a stoic character is not easy. We can always convene and exchange advice if you'd like any. This may be a case of mistaken expectations, but I do have to agree with Arndress on a lot of these points. I mean, I was kind of expecting. I mean, the vibes I got from this guy was he's like the Shadow the Hedgehog of Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonists or something. He seems like he'd have quite the edge to him, and be kind of unscrupulous in that way. And what I got was someone who was surprisingly calm and principled. I did not learn a whole lot about him. I kind of knew it in the background because of your descriptions on Discord and stuff. But yeah, I didn't learn a whole lot. And I don't know if he's supposed to have a bit of an edge and it was kind of missing, but I didn't see much of one. He seemed almost kind of easygoing. It didn't seem like he wanted anything out of the game in particular. And I think that's something you need, especially for who seems like a pretty active character in his source material. You got to go into the game asking what does he want? What does he want to get out of this? There were a lot of filler lines that kind of felt like where he was just kind of saying whatever, and that's okay. I encourage that, I have encouraged that recently, but you got to have some substance in between. That's not to say it was all bad, but he kind of felt like in that way, Where, with Yuno, I know there's not a whole lot to work with. So he just kind of feels like a regular guy in a lot of aspects. And that's kind of how Yuno felt. He didn't have any kind of over-the-top reactions to anything in particular. He just felt like a pretty regular, normal guy. He was just enjoying himself, but not doing anything in particular.
Mm-hmm.
I do kind of like when he got a little smug when he was winning and stuff, or where he got a high 7 once, or a 7 high. And he was like, impossible. How could the duel master? How could this happen to me? But yeah, maybe go more into the lore and more about what he wants in particular. Like you said, you were like currently watching the series. I don't know if he has any kind of arc that you can try to reflect in the game. That's generally what I've tried to do with Maya, for example, another stoic character. You try to sort of make the strip sequence a microcosm of their arc, so you can show different sides of them and how they develop. I'm not sure if he has one. I mean, apparently he doesn't lose ever. And so I'm not sure how much he can develop.
As a microcosm, he will now never lose a game of SPNatI.
Fair enough.
I think your feedback is fair. It is still early days. He's only got like 800 lands or so, and I'm still trying to... It's not that I'm afraid of retreading old ground, but it's like trying to find him as distinct identity from Yuno. And I know that's ironic given that like I'm literally already writing the entire set of banter between Yusei and Yuno because I know people are going to probably pair them together. He doesn't really... On a broad sense, all Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonists, like main protagonists, are the opposite of the character that came before them. Like, Jaden is the opposite of Yugi in a couple of ways, until like he gets character development that like takes him away from being like super happy-go-lucky to being, positive and caring, but still like having been through a lot. Whereas with Yusei, he starts out having been through a lot because he's grown up as a lower class citizen living in a slum. 2 out of 3 of his first duels of the series are against a police officer. Crazy as that would sound, but like he is very straightforward and direct a lot of the time. Like he's not the kind of person to like go on a long speech about his friends or anything. He'll just more like casually mention them and how much he would rely on them sometimes. So I think there is room for me to do it there, but he wouldn't really, apropos of nothing, just say, oh yeah, I've got this friend, Jack. He beat me in a duel and stole my rare card. That sort of thing is...
Maybe make him like more standoffish at the start?
Maybe.
And then if he developed into being more calm and easygoing, that would feel tangible.
Yeah, I suppose.
I just want to give an example of a stripping line that I think really works for him well. With his chest reveal, he can say, I had to work hard for these muscles. Wasn't easy given how limited our diets were back in Satellite. What do you think? And I really like that because it's about what's happening. It's not... it is a name drop of Satellite, but it's talking about like his life and something very relevant to what he's doing right now. And so not everyone could say that. Not everyone has those muscles. But yeah, I think that kind of line really works. And even then, you don't want every line to be that line, but that's one that's like an outstanding example.
The one example you did give
him with Heisenberg, so it kind of fell a little flat because it's a twink next to him. But
you just had to single out the socks though, Arndress, which was like that's with any character. This is why all my characters take off their socks and shoes at the same time. It's that I literally don't know what does the character say for taking off your socks.
It's really nice to have that extra non-nude runway for targeted conversations, but it's so bad for generic lines, and that's why Sanako takes off her shoes and socks off at the same time too.
None of my characters wear socks, except for Ryuko. I don't talk about her.
I do have a question for the two of you. Did either of you try him with his helmet outfit instead?
No.
I confess I didn't notice he had an outfit. I'm so sorry.
That's fine.
I targeted it.
Yeah.
I figured it wouldn't be that different.
It's not that different because it's literally just his first stage. But what I have done is, like, if he's in his default outfit, he talks about dueling in a more general sense. And if you have his helmet outfit on, he instead has, like, prioritizes some lines where he talks about, you know, riding a bike instead. And I just did that because I could, really. And because, like, his helmet look is iconic to the series. So I felt like I had to get it in somewhere, but I didn't want it to be his default outfit. Because, you know, Yu-Gi-Oh character, gotta have the dual disc.
Last thing I want to say, you know, regarding that point of, like, what does he want? What does he want out of the game? I think this is an issue with male characters in general. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with them or that you did something wrong, but it's kind of like a reluctance, I would say, on the part of many writers of male characters to really dive into male sexuality in SPNatI. You know, a lot of the time it's just the player is the only male character in the game. That happens often, and it's fine for girls to kind of come onto the player because the player is totally passive, and you can kind of just project yourself onto that. But when you're writing a male character, I think there's a strong reluctance from a lot of writers against like making them too aggressive or hitting on the girls too hard, because that can. I think they're trying to. I've never written a male character, but to me, it feels like they're trying to avoid coming off as kind of predatory. And what you can get is sort of a lack of any kind of conviction or assertiveness, or they feel very asexual by the end of the game because they don't come on to any of them. You know, I've never seen a guy, except for like maybe Leon, get super into like dirty talk with any of like with any like female character that they're being played with, especially towards the end. The sexuality it so often feels muted coming from them for that reason, and I wonder if that's something you might be struggling with consciously or not.
It's not really a matter of that, because like I've written, you know, Dunban and Zeke, and I sort of got over the fear of being dirty with those targets. But with Yusei, it's basically just because of his personality. I'm still trying to find that, you know, right balance of making him, you know, express interest, but also keeping him like cool.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? It's hard to be cool, or you're jerking off and like, oh yeah, baby, I love you. I haven't. You have to give that part of yourself away a little bit.
I mean, it was so easy with Zeke and Pandy because it's literally the couple is right there. They can just say whatever they want to each other. But on this note, I haven't really put out a big update for him since I did this, but Tweetsy and I have gotten a lot of banter between Yusei and Nadeshiko of all characters, but they have a surprising amount of like synergy together, and I got into that kind of dialogue between the two of them. So it has given me a better idea of like how to have him work in that regard going forward.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just talking about, you know, what does he want? You know, you got to ask the question also, what is he into? And how does he express that? So something worth considering. But yeah, I mean, of course, the art is amazing. And I have no doubt that you'll be able to figure things out in the long run. So that's going to do it. Unless either of you have any final comments on Yusei or any of the characters we spoke about today.
I do have one thing to say, which is that like I'm sort of doing the thing of like he has like a lot of ship tease with a girl, but he also has a lot of like you know when like two male characters, one's the protagonist, one's the rival, and they have a lot of like banter back and forth, and you're like, okay, yeah, there's, you know, some tension going on there. That's sort of like informed like how I think of what he's into. It's like, okay, for women, he's into, you know, Akiza, who's like really heavily ship teased as like basically being his girlfriend, but they don't kiss or anything. And like they like basically confess to each other at the end of the series. But then on the other hand, he clearly has like gay shipping potential with Jack Atlas, his friend turned rival turned friend.
Arndress, anything?
I only wanted to comment on male characters flirting. I think the difficulty is when it's not a targeted, when it's a targeted line, it's fine. You can have whatever reaction you need to. But when it's not reciprocated, when it's just constant flirts coming in, I think that's the difficulty a male character has. So absolutely, I acknowledge the issue you bring up. But I think like a character that was just made to be, say, a big flirt all the time would come across as predatory for that reason. In the same way a female character might not be, even if that's not fair. So I don't envy the challenges of writing a male character.
I think anyone that writes a male character that isn't like a total sleaze, like you're afraid of writing someone like Kazuma or Chaz. Like, no disrespect to the characters themselves or the people that made them, but from like the average like male dev, you want to avoid coming across as like your character just being pervy.
Absolutely. And if, you know, they say, hey, hot stuff, and the girl reacts not at all, like no reaction, and he just keeps on going, it feels like unwanted. It's just weird. I don't know. It's kind of funny. If a character can play into that, if that's part of their character, that's one thing. But I don't think that would suit Yusei. So, yeah, targets. I'm looking forward to this Nadeshika targets. That'd be good.
And they say it's a man's world out there. Well, thanks for coming on, Arndress, to this man's world, and Nord as well. I think we've gone on long enough, but these were some very interesting projects that we covered. And remember, check out the Livecast AMA forum. Check out the feedback poll, both in the descriptions below. We will see you next time.